Tonight, this video showing another deadly U.S. military strike against a boat allegedly smuggling drugs to the U.S., killing 2 narco-terrorists on board, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. This is the 8th strike the Trump administration has announced against alleged drug boats since early September, killing at least 36 people.
Yeah, we've actually now killed over 40 so-called narco-terrorists, even though the administration's not provided public evidence for its claims. But even if they have some, I've watched enough JAG to know the typical approach to drug boats is to intercept them and arrest the suspects, not murder them with no due process.
Yeah, he's right. One look at the headlines and you're more likely to see stories on gaudy chandeliers and gold leaf ceilings. Meanwhile, missiles are literally being fired into international waters with nowhere near enough members of the media asking the hard questions.
The administration insists these strikes are consistent with international law. Do you agree with that?
No, it's murder. It's very simple. If this president feels that they're doing something illegally, then he should be using the Coast Guard. If this is an act of war, then you use our military, and then you come and talk to us first. But this is murder. It's sanctioned murder that he is doing that. And it's very simple for someone like him to talk about killing people or doing something in the name of war. He's never actually served. He's never actually pulled a trigger. And it's very dangerous what he's doing, both to our international relations, to our friends down in South America, and to these men and women that have to make these calls for a president who has zero understanding about the responsibility someone has when it comes to having to make life and death decisions. It's disgusting what he's doing.
John Oliver opened his show last week tonight by first mocking Donald Trump's decision to tear down large portions of the White House East Wing, build a $300 million, 90,000 square foot ballroom while swaths of the population are clambering to stay afloat. Oliver rightfully called it, quote, too on the nose, a fitting metaphor for the bigger story underneath.
Tonight, this video showing another deadly U.S. military strike against a boat allegedly smuggling drugs to the U.S., killing 2 narco-terrorists on board, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. This is the 8th strike the Trump administration has announced against alleged drug boats since early September, killing at least 36 people.
Yeah, we've actually now killed over 40 so-called narco-terrorists, even though the administration's not provided public evidence for its claims. But even if they have some, I've watched enough JAG to know the typical approach to drug boats is to intercept them and arrest the suspects, not murder them with no due process. And all of this is bad enough before you learn this.
President Trump tonight suggesting he'll soon order strikes on cartels smuggling drugs by land, too.
Something very serious is going to happen, the equivalent of what's happening by sea. And we're going to Congress just to tell them what we're doing.
Yeah, he apparently plans to launch strikes on suspected drug traffickers in Venezuela without congressional approval, saying, we're just going to kill people. They're going to be like dead. This has already been a lot. Because between tearing down the White House, trying to use the Justice Department to pay himself, and proudly sharing AI footage of him literally shitting on Americans, the president now also appointed himself judge, jury, and executioner of foreign citizens. And it is infuriating that neither Congress nor the courts seem to be interested in putting a stop to any of this, because we are supposed to live in a country of checks and balances.
And that story is something that we've covered here at Meidas at length, the relentless military-style air and naval strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. At least 8 separate operations have taken place, some resulting in multiple deaths and minimal transparency on the legal basis that no ballroom demolition is flashy enough to detract our attention from.
Well, I think that there is always a choice, and you're right about the demand issue, and I wish that we could do more about that. And this has been going on forever, that we have a drug consumption problem here and a drug supply problem coming from South and Latin America. So I totally get that. But when you're looking at how this fight is being executed at this particular moment, it doesn't make a lot of sense. First and foremost, the fact that no one can confirm that we've actually been taking out narco traffickers or huge drug traffickers, however you want to say it. And last week when we were talking about this, Dana had just seen the alert that the admiral in charge of the Southern Command had resigned. And he was the one who was in charge of this. And the reporting is that he wasn't comfortable with the mission and had been pushing back within the Pentagon. And do you think he would have resigned if everything was by the book? So we have 32 people that have been killed so far, 7 individual strikes. We know that the Colombian president is alleging at least that an innocent fisherman was murdered. We know that there's a family from Trinidad who's saying that a member of their family was killed. And then it is really important that we have repatriated 2 people, one to Colombia, one to Ecuador, because that indicates that we don't have any evidence to prosecute them, that we didn't know who these guys were. Because if you did have evidence, you would bring them before a court. And I know that you're going to make fun of me, and I am prepared for it each and every day, but drug traffickers also have rights. The law applies. We should have the evidence. They should be charged with something, and they should come before a court of law. And Rand Paul was on the Sunday shows this weekend, and he said to Kristen Welker, when you kill someone, if you're not in a declared war, which we are not, Congress with the war powers, you really need to know someone's name at least. You have to accuse them of something. You have to present evidence.
Oliver asked point blank, where's the constitutional oversight? Because intercept and arrest has usually been the play, not, quote, order and kill without due process, which is basically what the president aims to keep doing, judging by his response.
And Mr. President, if you are declaring war against these cartels and Congress is likely to approve of that process, why not just ask for a declaration of war?
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay. Yeah.
But his decision is alienating members of his own party, right? Senator Rand Paul went on Fox News, of all places, over the weekend and publicly condemned the strikes as he called them, quote, extrajudicial killings, likening them to actions taken by authoritarian regimes. Well, if it walks like a duck. And he went on to warn that, quote, only Congress has the authority to declare war.
You, Senator Paul, what do you need to hear in a briefing? What questions do you have?
You know, it's not so much about a briefing, but we haven't had a briefing. To be clear, we've got no information. I've been invited to no briefing. But a briefing is not enough to overcome the Constitution. The Constitution says that when you go to war, Congress has to vote on it. And during a war, then, there's a lower rules for engagement. And people do sometimes get killed without due process. But the drug war or the crime war has typically been something we do through law enforcement. And so far, they have alleged that these people are drug dealers. No one said their name. No one said what evidence. No one said whether they're armed. And we've had no evidence presented. So at this point, I would call them extrajudicial killings. And this is akin to what China does, to Iran does with drug dealers. They summarily execute people without presenting evidence to the public. So it's wrong.
At the same time, let's not forget Admiral Alvin Halsey, the 4-star in charge of the U.S. Southern Command, overseeing these maritime operations. He abruptly retired barely a year into his term, with reports from inside defense circles alluding to internal concerns about legality of these missions. Together, these developments should prompt more questions from the media, right? Simply asking, what is happening and why are we just accepting answers like this as adequate responses?
In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O.
Now, of course, Trump demolishing the East Wing is a story worth covering, right? We've covered it here. But it cannot be at the detriment to needed questions on what is a clear disregard of international law.
Are you going with us? Huh? Are you going with us, Maggie?
Not with you.
Good.
Just one more on Venezuela. The president of Venezuela called the strike on the boat illegal. Are you concerned that Maduro might escalate something?
No, what's illegal are the drugs that were on the boat and the drugs that are being sent into our country and the fact that 300 million people died last year from drugs. That's what's illegal.
Do you think he's not telling the truth when he's...
You see, Trump has always been the master of deflection, commander-in-chief of smoke and mirrors. But that makes it all the more important that those in the media continue to hold him to account on these issues as he continues to play judge, jury, and executioner with little to no pushback. It's on those in the media to call it to attention, as John Oliver did.
Between tearing down the White House, trying to use the Justice Department to pay himself, and proudly sharing AI footage of him literally shitting on Americans, the president now also appointed himself judge, jury, and executioner of foreign citizens. And it is infuriating that neither Congress nor the courts seem to be interested in putting a stop to any of this, because we are supposed to live in a country of checks and balances.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.